Welcome to Cinema Chop Shop. Watch, chop, retrofit.
So I was super jealous of my mom because she has a Friday birthday this year, and it's on Labor Day weekend, which is a real sweet spot in the calendar.
Totally.
Also, this is not a happy birthday podcast.
No, it's Cinema Chop Shop. It's a movie podcast where we talk about films and such.
Yes.
Every couple of weeks or so. And
somewhat weekly. That's
sometimes.
what I call my trivia.
Well, you know, October is coming, and
Yes.
that's when we're going to throw down
Yeah.
on the weekly schedule and do the Halloween thing.
The Halloween thing. Have we nailed down the theme? I know we talked about
I think we're going to do it.
Can you remind me?
You came up with it.
I know, but there was a difference of opinions about how far back we should go.
I think
right?
we're gonna do 10-year increments, starting with present day backwards. Every 10 years, talk about the best horror movies of those 10 years.
So going back 40 years.
Yeah.
To 1984.
Yeah.
Good fucking year.
Fuck yeah. So that's coming up, and we're gonna have to really get the band back together for that. No travel excuses. No
COVID.
No, I'm tired. None of that shit. No, you're on board or you're not on board. Yeah. I'm Shawn, your host. You've already heard Travisito.
That's me.
And Todd.
Thank you for having me again.
You're welcome.
As always.
We were going to be joined by friend of the show, Lee, but unfortunately he had a family emergency on his drive over here.
That is unfortunate, Lee.
He has about a 40-mile drive, so it was unfortunate that he had to turn back around and deal with his emergency.
I still haven't met this guy, and I'm not 100% convinced that he exists.
Joey can attest to it. He's a great guy, and we're sad that he could not be here tonight. I will mention his movie pick in the back half of the show, though. We're talking about photography movies. Specifically, we were inspired by the collection on the Criterion Channel this month, The Photographer's Gaze.
Yeah, so we should specify that this is about actual camera work, not cinematography. This is not about shooting movies, but shooting still photographs.
Photography as a theme or a focal point, or a photographer as the main character of a film.
And for the most part, it's traditional photography, film photography.
Yeah.
And it's got to be a completely foreign concept to kids, all our kids who are listening out there.
The kids, the youth.
Who have only ever taken a photograph on their smartphone.
You know, and watching these movies back, I was taken back to college photography 101, the days in the dark room, and sitting over the little trays of chemicals and swishing around the paper and watching your images come forth. There's something really magical and it's not magical, it's chemicals, but tactile about the process versus just snapping something with your phone.
Yeah.
It is a much different experience and process. So a lot of these movies showcase that lost era. I mean, it still exists. Film cameras still exist.
Yay or nay, do you guys still have actual photographs, like a photo album?
Yes.
Family photos?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And so I have a question. Whenever you used to have to get your film processed, and this kind of speaks a little bit to my movie, but they would always give you a pack of negatives.
Yes.
With the purpose of those is to make reprints.
Yes.
Or to replace photos if they were destroyed.
Correct.
However, the vast majority of the time, people always kept the negatives in the same envelope as the pictures.
That's true, yes.
Unless you were really organized and you put your photos in an album and then, put the negatives in the safe.
It kind of defeated the whole purpose, doesn't it? Yeah. And we're going to talk about a feature film that we've all watched together, well, separately together as a collective.
We were thinking about each other while we watched it.
Were you? Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Look at this photograph!
Yes. We're going to kick things off talking about a movie from 1960 called Peeping Tom. Peeping Tom was revered among the Criterion crowd.
Right.
Yes.
I had not seen this movie up until a few weeks ago.
Super controversial at the time, though.
Yes. This film was directed by Michael Powell of Powell and Pressburger, the dynamic duo directors we talked about previously.
Right.
It was written by Leo Marks and produced by Powell. He produced it himself, and it stars Carl Boehm, Moira Shearer, Anna Massey, and Maxine Audley. I'll give you a brief overview, and then I'll let you guys take it away with some of your trivia and things about it. The film revolves around a serial killer who murders women using a portable film camera to record their dying expressions of terror, putting his footage together into a snuff film used for his own self-pleasure.
And so while watching this, I texted you, Shawn, and I was like, so I was patting myself on the back for waxing intellectual about the camera being his metaphorical murder weapon.
Spoilers.
It turns out it actually is the murder weapon. Pretty innovative for the time, I think.
Innovative, and the films that were around at the same time. We've got Psycho.
Yep.
We've got a few other movies that kind of came out around that time where we're scratching the surface of psychopaths, sociopaths, and this has been regarded as like a very solid entry into the archetype of the slasher film before slasher films were just like churned out like a meat grinder.
And the interesting thing about this movie is that up until this movie, and one reason why some people speculate that critics were turned off by it, was that the British horror film up until then, and maybe horror films in general, at least in terms of popular horror films, was gothic. It was in a castle. It was, Dracula, Frankenstein, the Hammer stuff.
Yeah.
A bit removed, also a bit campy, and sexual subtleties there, but not to the extent where, someone's weapon is a literal phallus that we're seeing pressed into someone's neck. So I think there was, this idea that it was a bit too far ahead of its time, particularly for the British audience.
So you were speaking to that as it being like a pioneering slasher film. It's regarded as one of the first slasher films in horror movie history, although it was not the first horror movie to use the convention of seeing things from the killer's point of view, as claimed in Scream 4 from 2011. The techniques had already been done before in The Lodger from 1944 and Hangover Square from 1945.
Great
Two
movie.
films that both
I've seen The Lodger, but not that.
starred Laird Krager and were directed by John Brom. Also,
Okay.
the title, Peeping Tom, we think of this and we think of a voyeur, and it's not as on the nose as that.
It's really not, and the first time I watched the movie, I was like, well, he kind of peeps through the window a couple of times, but then on second viewing, I was like, no, there's a lot of voyeurism going on that's not overt in the way that we think of it. And then, of course, the other thing is that Powell kind of like turns this around on the audience. The audience is the peeping Tom.
Audience is exactly.
The audience is watching this happen, and there's no mystery to this movie because right out of the gate, we know who the killer is, we know what his motive is, we know what his MO is, and so we are privy to information that the police don't know right out of the gate. So we are the peeping Toms.
Yeah.
We're the ones checking out all this stuff.
And also we see, too, the girlfriend, who's the nice person. She's kind of a peeping Tom, too, because she invades herself into his space, kind of surveilling him to a degree in a way that he doesn't want to. The mother, of course, who's blind.
My favorite character of the movie is the mother.
Yeah.
That woman is like a blind, like kung fu master.
Yeah.
Like she perceives things that aren't there. And she's able to
or perceives things that she can't perceive visually.
Yeah. And she's like, she even has that cool line where she finds herself upstairs in his dark room, and she says, "I've walked around this room so many times because it's right above her, and when you're blind, you're going by sound, and she can hear him walking around and moving things, so she knew the space."
Yeah.
So really cool shit going on with that.
And one thing I find kind of cool about that character, too, is she's really, to me, more sinister than... what's the character's name? Our main character, the Peeping Tom. But he's almost kind of affable, and you almost like him a little bit. She's very sinister right from the beginning with these cold stares,
drinking her Johnny Walker Red,
and she's hiding out in his room. Has gone into his room when he's not there, and there's I kind of like how Powell sort of plays with that a bit.
There were also some, speaking of Powell, there were some funny choices that he made in his characterizations across the board.
Lots of in-jokes.
From the detective having the very stereotypical, even the line of, who do you suspect, sir? I suspect everyone.
Yeah.
That's such a cheese line. Yeah. Then the psychologist that was a contemporary of Peeping Tom's father, very much almost like a Sigmund Freud-ish kind of character. Yeah. And then of course the Photoshop, the photography shop with the nudie pictures, and then the upstairs boudoir studio. Yeah. The very tarty, well, it's about time you got here. I have a date tonight. And
and then at the beginning of the movie, the old guy goes in there who's this kind of stuffy old guy to buy the nudie pictures, and then the little girl comes in behind him. But I love the
juxtaposition there,
Yeah, and then the shopkeep, though, when he leaves, gives a great droll line. Well, he won't be doing the crosswords tonight.
Yeah. Right. So, real quick, this is very quick. The phrase "Peeping Tom." Does anybody know the origin of that?
I do not.
No. So, according to my sources, it is from the boy who looked at Lady Godiva while she rode naked on a horse through the village, even though all were warned not to look at her.
Oh, okay.
Interesting.
I have no references.
I'll take your word for it. It sounds good.
Yeah.
As a photography movie, in terms of those elements of photography that are so cool and unique, this film is jam-packed.
Yeah, absolutely.
From his day job of working as a focus puller for a movie studio, to his side job shooting the nudes or the boudoir shots upstairs from the news agent's shop, to his dark room and his projection room where he watches his murders on film. This thing is so packed with the technology at the time of what what photography was. It's a document, really. Of what it's all about.
It was set contemporaneous to the release, right? It was supposed to be 1960.
Yeah.
Okay, good. I got some more tidbits. It's one of Martin Scorsese's favorite films. Coincidentally, Scorsese's lifelong editor, Thelma Schoonmaker, was married from 1984 to 1990 to Michael Powell.
And Scorsese is often credited with reviving the interest in the film. He's the one that got it. He, I think, commissioned a remastering of it and had it re-released in the U.S. years after it had been out.
Now, didn't this really screw up Powell's career in terms of solo director?
Yeah, so the response to it in Britain, and of course the stuffy Brits, the video nasty era, of course, was 20 years away, but
they pulled it from theaters after 5 days.
Exactly. And the funny thing was, it's actually a misconception that all of the critical response was vitriolic. Apparently, in some of the interviews I saw, the trade publications actually were very favorable about it. It was the professional critics who really disliked it, and then the producer panicked because, of course, those are the people that have kind of the big
power
names and so that's why it got pulled, was because the producer kind of panicked.
There was another choice that he made that was controversial and detrimental to the film. He cast himself as the main character's father, and then his own son as a young version of the main character.
Yep.
So they were like, he's too into this. He's too close to it. This is scandalous.
Yep. And apparently, I think I saw an interview with his daughter or something, and she said, he didn't really have anything in particular in mind with it. He just thought it'd be, kind of fun, and they needed to cast someone for it, and he figured it might as well be him. And so he didn't have any kind of particular metaphor in mind by doing that.
Yeah, and the thing with his father recording everything in the house. I guess for anybody who has not seen the movie, I guess we should back up and say the house, it's a very large home that was the family home, and the father was a very established scientist, psychologist,
sociologist, I guess.
Yeah, what have you. And when he passed, the son took over the household, and he had to let out rooms. So basically, the downstairs was rented out to various tenants.
But it still has like the grand staircase, and
yes, and what we find out later in the film is that the father recorded all of the rooms. Everything was wired for sound, and he would, I don't want to say torture his son, but he was not nice to his kid.
He was using him as a guinea pig because he was, as a sociologist, he wanted to study fear.
Yeah, and he would do shit like
response to fear.
he'd throw a lizard in his bed, and the kid he woke up to like a lizard on his chest.
Are we
and
talking about Michael Powell? That's who did this?
No,
who did it?
The character, the father,
Oh,
Peeping
okay.
Tom's
I'm
father.
sorry.
Yeah, Peeping Tom's father. You know, you've got that scene that he filmed where he's showing the downstairs neighbor that he's kind of sweet on, and all of this crazy shit that the dad did to him. So
the reason I mentioned that is because some of the critical response to it was that it was too rough on the kid. And he later commented, he's like, "That's ridiculous. I had a great time."
Yeah. And the kids that are anyone who has interviewed with kids who are really young, like 6, 7 years later, they don't know anything about what the plot is in these horror movies that they're in most of the time. They're just told, hey, go do X, Y, Z, and that's it.
Yeah.
They don't know that he probably didn't have any clue that he was supposed to, he was being a peeping Tom looking at
I believe they say Cluedo in England.
Right.
the thing about all of that, though, is that it appealed to like the pop psychology of the time. You know, it was very much textbook Freudian type psychology. You know,
voyeurism.
The sins of the father are passed down to the son, kind of thing.
Which was another unfortunate. So, I guess we need to talk a little bit more about the Psycho comparison, because it was very unfortunate for Powell that they came out the same year. I assumed that Psycho came out first, but that's actually not true. Peeping Tom came out in April in London, and then in July is when Psycho was released in New York. Now, I think that's maybe one reason why Psycho got more notice was because New York versus London.
But it got pulled in London after 5 weeks,
and that as well.
May.
And I doubt that, did it get U.S. distribution right away, or was it delayed?
I don't know that.
And also, Hitchcock at that point was already kind of a celebrity director, whereas Powell and Pressburger were well respected, but they pretty much were confined to the British Isles for most of their career.
Yeah.
Hitchcock had that kind of built-in...
By order from the Crown, they were confined to the
Right. But then, of course, you got the mommy issues of Psycho versus the daddy issues of Peeping Tom, and so it really... And then the pop psychology aspect, like you said, that's kind of questionable in terms of actual...
Validity.
The validity of the psychology, but yeah.
But I think that they do play nicely together. I think that'd make a good double feature.
I would actually argue that Peeping Tom might be Psycho's obviously a classic, a great film, but there is a little something lost once you know the twist, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
The twist is a huge component of the movie. You can still watch it and enjoy it and appreciate it.
Psycho plays like two different movies as well.
Yeah.
You've got your first half and your second half. This one is a cohesive plot I like a lot better.
Yep.
And I do like the guy that played Peeping Tom. I hate that we keep calling him Peeping Tom. We should really look up his character's name. But
his actual name was Tom Peeping.
But Carl Bohm, he did a really nice job of being a likable person, but at the same time he was very guarded around people.
So. From that subsequent scene where he arrives back at the house and they're having a party.
Yes.
And they come out to invite him in. He's like, "Oh no, I have work."
Mark.
Yeah, of course, because
you said, "Oh,
in
hi,
this movie
Mark."
they say, "Oh, hi, Mark," more than they do in the room.
Yeah. Speaking of Hitchcock too, so the other film that actress who plays Mark's love interest is known for is Hitchcock's 70s kind of giallo type movie, Frenzy, which I think is an underrated Hitchcock movie. If you've never seen it,
I've seen Frenzy. I need to check that out.
I like that one quite a bit, and she was also one of the main actresses.
And Todd, do I assume correctly that you are a Hitchcock completist? Have you seen everything?
I don't think I've seen all the silent stuff.
Okay.
So, but anything sound, I'm pretty sure I've seen most of the sound
I'm
stuff.
pretty sure I haven't heard all of the silent stuff.
So that's Peeping Tom. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. It's a different kind of movie. It's not gory.
No.
It's very suggestive, but it's not gory at all.
And I do think the interesting thing is we don't actually see any contact with the phallic weapon until the very end.
Right. But it's like you said, it's very suggestive. It's insinuated, but that subtlety kind of adds to the charm of the film, I think.
I agree.
And I think the ending's fantastic. That last line is kind of heartbreaking, where you hear, because the camera's still rolling and you hear him go, "Hi, Daddy, take my hand,"
Yep.
or something like that. And it's like they're reunited in some.
Was that the mid-credits scene?
Right.
Peeping Tom. Check it out and let us know what you think about it if you have not seen it. If you haven't seen it,
we all liked it, right?
Yeah, I liked it a lot.
Oh yeah.
2 viewings within a month, and I enjoyed it both times.
Mm-hmm. I had seen it probably 15 years ago, but I definitely didn't remember a lot of it.
I think this is a good time for us to take a break, go pee in the yard, but not before we say, "Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby and get ourselves some
pixie sticks."
Nice.
Yum, yum. It's time for a tasty and refreshing snack. We promise to satisfy your hunger, your thirst, your sweet tooth. So visit our refreshment center now. Let's go.
And we're back. Thank you for sticking with us while we pee in the yard. Everybody went.
I did, for sure. And there are mosquitoes.
Lots.
Did you know that Fauci was hospitalized with West Nile virus? And he's recovering now, but he had it.
Okay.
So be careful out there, kids.
Hey, Travis.
Yo.
What do we like to do when we come back from break?
Hold on. I'm trying to... A beer check-in?
A beer check-in. And Todd has been so kind as to show up with something interesting.
Yes. Well, I have 2 different varieties here. One is from a brewery in Clemson.
Yes.
Kite Hill?
Kite Hill Brewing. It's fairly new. They've only been open for like 2 years. I've been there once. They do allow dogs in their outside seating area, and they've got a decent menu. I had a muffalata sandwich.
Okay. And this beer is called the Cole Porter. Nice
Porter.
play on.
Yes.
And so both the singer and, of course, if you couldn't guess, it is a porter beer that they claim is a robust porter.
Robusto.
However, Shawn and I think both kind of agreed that
it's
a
mellow
little bit,
porter.
It's kind of
It's
mellow.
really light in color for a
No,
porter.
that's not what we poured for you.
Oh.
We poured, what's this? Go Chasing Waterfalls. And this is a cream ale from the same brewery?
No, this. Wait a minute. No. Oh, I'm sorry. This one was the Kite Hill Brewing. The Cole Porter was Groove.
Groove. Okay.
Okay, sorry. Got those backwards.
Well, this is a cream ale that we're drinking.
I like it.
Yeah.
It's nice and light. It could be a little bit colder for my taste.
I did get it off the shelf, sorry. But it's pretty good.
It's not bad.
No?
Yeah,
No
I can deal
complaints.
with it. I'm usually not a cream ale guy because they tend to be on the sweeter side.
Me either, yeah.
Yeah. That one's not too overpowering, though, on that
I like it.
end, I think. Yeah. So.
All right, so this is the back half. We're going to talk about the other photographic films that we want to bring to the table in addition to our feature that we just finished discussing. And Todd, you're going to go first.
Okay. So the film I'm going to talk about is called Blow Up. And this is probably a quintessential film in this genre, if you want to call it that.
Not to be confused with the John Travolta movie Blowout.
Right.
Which was highly influenced by this film,
Yeah.
Brian De Palma's Blowout, which was one that I thought about doing because I love Blowout
But
by De
that's
Palma.
more of an audio thing,
That one's
right?
an audio, yes. So we couldn't have really done that one. But it was, anyway, highly influenced by it. And so Blow Up is directed by, and I'm going to butcher the guy's name, but it's the Italian director Michelangelo Antonioni.
I think you nailed
I
it.
think you got it.
Got it? Antonioni? Okay.
My only note is Michelangelo.
Okay, gotcha. And then, of course, I did my little hand gesture like the Italians are known to do.
Not stereotypical at all. Nope.
No. Now, the interesting thing about this is he filmed this in Swingin' London, which is an important part of the film, but he did not speak English very well. He did speak English, but wasn't great at it, which caused some problems at times on the set, particularly with the models, as we'll talk about or can talk about later.
Well,
but,
no is no in English and Italian.
But the premise of Blow Up, it's in Swingin' London. It's David Hemmings, who, other than this film, his most famous role is probably Argento's Deep Red in the mid-'70s. Plays a mid-20s photographer. Must be a pretty well-known photographer because models are trying to, come up into his place and get them to take their pictures. And it seems like that he's, well-known as a photographer. Has this pretty posh loft that he lives in. Austin Powers clearly was riffing off of this film. There's the "yeah, baby" stuff, kind of a scene going on.
Yeah, when Austin Powers is doing you're a tiger. He's taking all the pictures. It's straight out of this movie.
And the whole movie, Hemmings has on a pair of white pants, which Austin Powers has on in that scene anyway. So definitely, the swing in London aspect's large and in charge here. Beautifully shot, by the way, which you would expect for a film about photography. What happens is we start out. It's kind of a slow burn of a film, but eventually Hemmings. We find out about Hemmings' character Thomas, that he's very disaffected. He's an asshole to all the models. He's just kind of listless. He goes wandering around in a park one day and is taking pictures, and he sees this woman with her older lover and starts taking photos of them. The woman catches him doing this, and as he's leaving, chases him down and is very adamant that she wants to get the film
the negatives
back.
Yeah.
Now, does she want it so that he doesn't have it, or does she want it because she wants it?
She doesn't really give she doesn't really give a reason. She offers
You only
him
assume
money.
it's because she's having an affair.
Yes,
she doesn't
that's
want
what we
those
assume.
photos to be
It's an
out
older
there.
man. We assume that she's probably having an affair or something like that.
I'm still hung up on how the guy's name is Hemmings and he's wearing white pants.
Well, the character's name is
Hemmings.
Thomas, but anyway,
Hemmings.
I got you.
Thank you.
This character is played by Vanessa Redgrave, by the way.
Nice.
And so we never get a name for her, though. She goes back to his pad, as it were. They're negotiating, basically him getting back the photo. Eventually, they start to have a romp. I think they end up getting in a romp in the bed.
She ends up topless.
She ends up topless, yeah.
Is she
And
trading sex for the film?
It's not really.
Is it implied?
It's
not really.
No.
Okay.
I think
He
she's kind of.
he had made the decision to give her back the film, it seems like, at this point, but she might have been doing it to seal the deal, though, possibly.
I think what they were getting across in this movie is that, and this, I think I joked with you about this.
Mm-hmm.
In the late '60s, if you were a photographer, you got all the ladies. I mean, that's what they were projecting, was that he was irresistible.
Before every creeper was a photographer.
Right,
Yep.
exactly.
And this is one reason why, he's just kind of rolling his eyes. So these two teenage girls come to his flat, and there's this famous scene in there where the two teenage girls just keep hounding him to, take their picture, and eventually they just have this sexual romp where they're rolling around in paper, and they're stripped down to their pantyhose, one in green panties, the other one in it's all color coordinated.
I like it.
And there's this kind of long
Do they
scene
bust
with that.
through the paper?
Kind of,
Yeah, that's
yes.
great. I love it. I love
yeah,
that
there's this
imagery.
whole thing, they're rolling around in the paper. Anyway,
Y'all didn't tell me about the paper part. I would have watched it.
but I think the point too is that he's just very disaffected. He doesn't really care about any of this stuff.
But
he has a wife that, and then it's like he doesn't even seem to care about the wife. She's hooking up with his friend and all this.
So he's very nonchalant about all of it.
Yeah. What happens is eventually, so this woman finally disappears with the negative. She gives him a number, but when he tries to call it, it's the classic, it's the wrong number. So he doesn't know what's happened to her. But then he starts, after he has this sexual romp with the two teenage girls, he breaks it up because he starts looking at the big blow-up shots of the park scene, and he notices this image on the ground. And it starts nagging at him. He can't quite make out what it is, and he gets a magnifying glass out.
Object
And looks
on the ground?
Well,
In the image?
we eventually, it keeps nagging at him, and eventually he goes back to the park at night and walks to the area of the shot where it is, and there's a dead man lying on the ground.
Whoa! How long between the picture and him finding the dead man?
like a day.
Yeah, I think it's all
a
the
day.
same
This
day.
dude has been laying dead in the park for 24
So
hours.
we get
pretty
the impression that it's secluded.
It's very secluded.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
And
not
by
a-
the way,
a skate park.
yeah. By the way, this scene is where this happens. The use of audio in this film is masterful because Herbie Hancock did the soundtrack.
Nice.
So a jazzy soundtrack. The Yardbirds appear in it with Jimmy Page and Jeff Beck, so you have that kind of rock and roll element. But then you have the scene in the park that's so unsettling, in part because you've had all this jazzy music where you only hear the rustling of the leaves of the tree.
So they're withholding the soundtrack or the score
It's
and just putting you in that element. That's awesome.
And it's so unsettling.
Yeah, one of the cool things about the film is how he uses photography and uses the magnifier, the blow up, to get in close to see what he needs to see to piece together what happens. Because in one of the shots, you can make out a guy in the bushes that's watching them with their little makeout. And you don't know who it is. Is it the woman's husband? Is it a total stranger? You don't know, but he's killed the older guy.
Yep.
And so he tries to get his friend to come help him, and they're going to go back out to the park. And
just so his friend is like his manager, I guess, because they're putting a book together.
Yeah.
And he wants to use he wanted to use those pictures in the park for the book even before he knew something was drawn to him to this immediately. And the friend's like just stoned out of his mind, and he can't get him to. So he finally goes back out there on his own during the day, and the body's gone.
The body's gone,
and there's no evidence of any. There's no blood anywhere. There's nothing.
And there's really no resolution after that.
Oh, and I actually,
there is a photograph.
Yes, the photograph exists, but you still can't. No matter how much he blows it up, it's just foggy. You can't see it.
It's really cool, though, because you had this guy who's completely disaffected and dissociated from everything around him, and he finally finds something that's got his interest.
Right.
And then it just evaporates.
Well, and I think that's why, another reason why the music kind of comes out and we only hear the rustling of the leaves, because now he's actually participating and living in the moment. Whereas with his photography and stuff, and with the jazzy music and the swinging London, it's all distraction, it's all surface, it's all, it's not real. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I have a question. I think it's obvious to the listeners at this point that I didn't watch this movie. I had limited amount of time for homework. So if you were the perpetrator of this crime and intended to move the body, why would you wait over a day to do so?
We don't know. I mean, for all we know, the cops may have found the body and taken it away. We don't know.
Yeah.
He doesn't call the police to
So we don't know
report
it
a crime.
was the perpetrator who moved the body.
We really don't know
we
anything.
don't know. We do
we just don't know.
And Tony just kind of leaves all of that.
Tony Baloney?
Yeah.
Tony Baloney.
Tony.
It's a cool movie.
Yeah. Oh, it's real. And the ending, and I won't tell exactly what happens at the end, but it's a cool ending. Some people will probably hate it because it kind of might find it pretentious or whatever. And I actually don't like a couple of the other movies of his that I've seen that kind of do similar things as this, La Aventura, something like that. Some people love that movie. I didn't care for it. There's a murder in the middle of the movie, and they just kind of drop it, and you don't know what's going on. I didn't like that one. But this one, though, I kind of liked where he was going with the symbolism behind everything that was going on.
Hell yeah.
And I don't want to give away the ending, but the sound that we hear in the last shot is, I think, kind of perfect, a perfect way to end the film. I really like the ending. Some people don't like the ending. I thought
You're
it
just
worked
making
really
people
well.
watch it.
And you feel like, too, it's like, well, why didn't he just, he could call the police and see, find out. But that wasn't the point. He wanted to, this was his thing.
He was engaged. He was totally living life.
For the first time.
Oh, and there's a great scene that we got to describe, too, because this movie becomes slowly hyper-realistic. And if you don't know what that term means, hyper-realism just means something that could theoretically happen, but it's just very odd and surreal, kind of surreal and just outside of norms. And so there's a scene that happens with the Yardbirds that I mentioned earlier, and this is where things have really gotten fucked up. He goes into this club where the Yardbirds are playing, Jimmy Page, Jeff Beck, and they're playing a rock and roll song, and everyone in the crowd is just standing there staring at the stage. It's a rock and roll show now. They're not dancing. They're not, except there's one couple in the back that's dancing, and that's
it's a
it.
Dream. It's a
and
fucking
then
dream.
Jeff Beck, towards the end of the song, takes his guitar and smashes it into the amp and throws the broken guitar into the crowd, and then there's a frenzy for the broken guitar. And it was just really weird. Hemmings / Thomas comes out with part of the guitar. He has to fight for his life to get out there, and then as soon as he gets out of the club, he just kind of discards it. And it's a really weird scene.
Like they were, like a switch went off when he threw the guitar, and they all came to life.
Yeah.
Almost like in a zombie way.
It was really, it was very zombie-like. That's what I thought of. It was like, George Romero all of a sudden. But really awesome. Weird, unsettling scene.
Now, was this in the Criterion collection as well?
Yep.
Cool.
Mm-hmm. Actually, I think it's the feature image for the collection.
Yeah. I think it's the image of him standing over the model doing the Austin Powers thing.
Doing the Austin Powers. Yeah, baby, make love to the camera.
Yeah, he literally does
also
that.
wearing hemming white pants.
Yes. All right. Thank you, Todd. Travis, you're up with a film.
All right, I watched a movie called Peeping Tom. Wait, no, hold on, wrong page. This movie is called 1 Hour Photo. And we all kind of simultaneously thought of this movie when the subject came up, I think. It's a more recent movie that involves photography. So it's from 2002. It's got an 81% on Rotten Tomatoes. It was directed by a guy named Mark Romanek. He's known mostly for directing music videos. He directed Closer by 9 Inch Nails. He also did Johnny Cash's cover of Hurt, the video for that, which is a song by 9 Inch Nails. 3 videos for David Bowie. Are You Gonna Go My Way by Lenny Kravitz, and Devil's Haircut by Beck, amongst other things. His music videos have won a whole bunch of awards, like 20 MTV awards, and he also won 3 Grammy Awards for Best Short Form Music Video, more than any other director. So this guy thinks visually. Okay, this director thinks very visually. The only features he has under his belt are 3 films. The first one, very little known, it's called Static from 1985. Then he did 1 Hour Photo, and then a movie called Never Let Me Go, which is based on a novel. So our plot, Cy Parrish runs a 1 hour...
Alex Garland wrote the screenplay, by the way, for Never Let Me Go. Alex Garland, who did...
Alex Garland,
yeah.
awesome. Yeah, I did not know that. Cy Parrish runs a 1 hour photo developing lab in a small mall. It looks like a Walmart, but it's supposed to be within a mall. He is a perfectionist about his work and generous to his regular customers, including a typical family headed by Will Yorkin. Over the years, he's seen their family grow through their photographs. But when he sees evidence of Yorkin being unfaithful, coupled with a threat to his position, his already precarious mental state tips over the edge. And that's your stock plot summary. We've got Robin Williams in the lead role as Cy Parrish. Then we also have Michael Vartan as William Will Yorkin. Connie Nielsen.
He was kind of the dead weight in the movie, I thought.
Yeah, I would agree. He looked like the lead singer for Creed.
Yeah.
And he was just flat as hell.
Connie Nielsen was great, very beautiful as his wife, Nina. Gary Cole, who is the bad boss from Office Space.
He's a more normal boss.
going?
Well, actually, I don't know.
He's kind of a dick in this, too.
Dick in this one, too, yeah.
He's a dick for reasons, though.
Yeah.
Clark Gregg.
And Clark Gregg and Eric LaSalle from Chicago Hope, right?
Yep.
Or was it ER? I think it was Chicago Hope.
It was one of those shows.
Maybe ER. And then a cameo appearance, one scene as the amateur pornographer Jim Rash.
Yes.
Shows up in this film.
Dean Pelton.
And I was like, dude, I fucking recognize that dude. And then it took me
You
a
better
little bit of
recognize,
research.
and you did.
Yeah.
Academy Award winner Jim Rash.
Exactly. So I saw this movie when it came out 20 plus years ago.
Same.
And then rewatched it for this episode, and it was a pleasant rewatch.
I was telling Shawn, I was a pretty big fan of. I had it on DVD.
Yeah.
And probably watched it 10 to 15 times up until maybe whenever I got rid of a DVD player, 2010.
15?
But it's been like 15 years since I've seen it. I was a big fan of this movie.
That's a red flag, bro.
No.
I
It's dark as shit, but yeah, I liked it.
I thought it was a serviceable movie.
I've seen it twice.
I watched it. This was the second watch. I watched it on Criterion, so I watched it at double speed.
Damn it was on Criterion
Yeah,
too.
because I wanted to watch it and just remind myself about it. And watching it at double speed, it felt like it was at normal speed, which tells me that.
Whoa! You watched it on double speed?
Yeah.
You're like my wife listening to
which
podcasts.
tells me
I don't even know how to do
which
that.
tells me the pacing of this movie was laboriously slow for a very simple plot. Okay, you don't. There's.
I disagree with you.
I didn't
I
find the
understand
pacing
what you're saying
problematic.
about pacing, but
Hear me
I feel
out.
like it only adds tension to his unraveling.
That's the problem I have with this movie then, because there's no mystery what he is and who he is. It's revealed very early on what his dysfunction is, and you can see from a mile away where this movie's going to go.
Well, I think it's interesting.
Therefore,
this category.
Therefore, at that kind of pace,
So here will be my
it's
argument.
ridiculous.
I think the curveball this movie throws you is you're right. You do know that stuff, but you end up kind of liking Cy because he's not. Now, Later in the movie, we find but he's not motivated by perversion. He wants to be Uncle Si.
But
that's what his goal is.
There's some shit that goes down.
There is later.
There's
later.
There's the turn.
Saw it 20 years ago. Fun rewatch. Interesting that for this category, because the main character Si is not primarily a photographer. He's a development.
He's a lab tech.
He's a lab tech for a photography company. However, he does take photos.
Yes.
In that he makes extra copies of people's personal photos.
No, he's a creep and he does
page,
things over the line. That's what unsettles you, though, is that you still kind of feel bad for him. I don't know. Maybe that was just me.
Specifically, he takes the photos from the Yorkin family.
Yes, and that's ultimately what gets him fired.
A big collage.
What
gets him fired is they're looking into him because he's a problematic employee. He's arguing with the toner guy.
But also it was there was hundreds of extra prints,
and they were probably mostly from.
They were his,
family. Yeah. In the opening monologue, he talks about how it's a very important work because in a fire, after you make sure that your children and your pets are okay, what are you looking for?
Yeah.
Your photographs.
There was a sense memory in this that was unlocked for me because when he has his psychotic turn, when he realizes that the husband is an adulterer, he starts scratching away his face on all the prints that are on his wall, and that's something that is very unique to photography. Is flaking away that color print from the paper. And I was like, oh yeah, you could do that.
You could do that. You can't do that. Well, you can now digitally, but it's different. It was very...
it's tactile.
Tactile and manual and hands-on. The color palette in this movie. We have to talk about the color palette. I felt that it was a brilliant choice on the part of the director to use such a vibrant, in-your-face color palette, considering it's a movie that is generally about photography.
And then Si dressed all in white. He's the good guy.
Well, even his hair was very pale blonde.
Yeah.
And also, like I said, considering his nitpickiness about very subtle variations in the cyan blue.
Yeah.
When that was the argument he got in with the tech guy was that there is a difference.
Threatening me,
it's too green. It's too green.
No, it was blue, and he said it's a 0.03 off.
Yeah.
You call me back down here, this thing better be belching fire. The last thing I'm going to say is it was very interesting to see Robin Williams in a rare serious role. So out of the 63 films that he made in his lifetime, only 12 of them were serious roles. We've got Dead Poets Society, Awakenings, Dead Again, Hamlet, Good Will Hunting, What Dreams May Come, Jacob the Liar, 1 Hour Photo, Insomnia, The Final Cut, The Night Listener, and The Butler. Of those 12 films, only 2 of them are films where Robin Williams played the antagonist.
Yeah.
They both came out the same year. It was this one and Insomnia.
He was on a mission.
So I was thinking about it, why that year, 2002, did Robin Williams make 2 movies in which they were serious roles and he was the antagonist? And I was maybe it's some post 9/11 melees. Maybe he was in a dark place. We know he had his demons. But then my theory got blown out of the water because also that year he made Death to Smoochie. So that's done.
That was a dark movie, Death to Smoochie.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for covering that one. My film should be watched by anyone who liked reading the 50 Shades of Grey books or liked watching 50 Shades of Grey for some reason.
I kind of liked it.
Yeah. Well, this is the good...
Did you actually read it?
No, hell no. I'm talking about the movies.
All right.
No.
My movie...
You know I never learned how to read, Todd.
My movie is what I would call the good version of 50 Shades of Grey. And even then, it's not perfect. Trust me. We'll get into that
25
too.
Shades.
It's called La Prisonnière.
Which means the prisoner in
In America, it was known as Woman in Chains. From 1968. We're also in the swinging 60s.
Yep.
There was already a movie called The Prisoner in the United States, so they had to change the title.
This is a French film directed by Henri Georges Clouzot.
Yep.
Henri.
And
We call him Henry over here in these parts.
It stars Laurent Terzif, Elizabeth Weiner,
Oh, yeah, good one.
and Bernard Frasson, Danny Carell, Michael Piccoli, and Dario Moreno. The film follows an attractive woman living with an avant-garde artist who falls disastrously for a voyeuristic owner of the gallery that shows her husband's work. It's Clouzot's only film completed in color. It was the last of his career.
What about the Pink Panther?
That is the wrong Clouzot.
Damn it. So this is the Wages of Fear guy, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So this is why. All right, first of all, this is why Travis needs to see this movie. Number one, it features a ton of art.
Art, okay.
As in,
I thought you were going to say TNA.
a lot of pop art from the 1960s.
Nice, I like it.
It's about a gallery. The main characters are a gallery owner, an artist who works for the gallery, and his significant other. There's a whole gallery installation at the beginning of the film with cool op art and neat kinetic sculptures and things. So
yeah, the installation thing was neat.
Yeah, if you're into art, check it out. As a document of the time, it's really neat. It takes you into that kind of Andy Warhol aesthetic of art being produced for the masses.
Yeah.
So that
Probably be a good double feature with Blowout.
Yeah, I think
Or Blow Up.
Blow
I'm
Up.
sorry.
Yes. The other component, of course, yes, there is a lot of sexuality. There's a lot of skin, although a little bit of nudity, not a ton.
Yeah, very. I think there was some side boob, and that was about it.
There's some nips.
All right.
There's some nips, but definitely you get a lot of scintillating imagery and a lot of build up to that kind of sexual tension. Yes.
I have a question. Why do dudes have nipples?
I don't know.
I understand it's like a vestigial thing, but that implies that at some point in the past, men were nursing the young. Does it not? There's no other purpose for the nipple.
I ask Robert De Niro. He has a lot to say on the matter.
If I ever had a child and it was a female child, I would name her Areola.
So the film's close in theme to other pictures of the time, including the aforementioned Blow Up, as well as Peeping Tom. There's some connective tissue to that. The dark links between men who make erotic images of women, films about such men and their models, and the viewers of such films. Also, there is a connection to the dream sequence in this film. Is connected to 2001: A Space Odyssey. There is very much a psychedelic kind of scene at the end of the film where I guess I should back up and kind of get into some plot. So you've got this guy. He's a production artist for this gallery. He's got his lovely, very attractive wife. And she kind of takes a detour at a gallery show and decides to hang out with the gallery owner at his place. And it starts out as a pretty innocuous hangout.
But it's established so that she and her husband have some sort of almost modern,
very much. Well,
she catches him talking to some.
She's a reviewer, an art critic, and he's like kissing on her and stuff. He's like, "Hey, I got to do what I got to do. I'm an artist. I'm trying to make it." She's like, "Fine, take my car." And so she goes back to the gallery owner's place, and
she's not happy about it, though.
No, she's not. But she goes back to his place, looking at his strange sculptures and artwork that he's collected over the years. And she asks him about photography and what is he into with photography. And he says, "Oh, I like photographing handwriting."
Wait, photographic handwriting.
Photographing handwriting.
Yeah.
So he whips out this slide projector and he slides this door. There's a screen already set up, and he's like, "We're gonna watch some slides of these photos." And he has inserted in his slide projector, in the midst of all these close-ups of various handwriting, a bondage shot.
Yeah.
A woman
and he acts like it's by accident.
A woman on all fours with a heavy chain around her neck.
It reminds me of the Office episode where Michael shows his photos of his trip to Puerto Rico, and then there's the one of him with Jan topless. All of a sudden, he's like, "Oh, sorry, how'd that get in there?"
He's like, "Whoops, whoops, whoops," and she kind of titters about it, and he's like, starts. Then he kind of then the turn happens. When she snickers about it, he's like, "Do you find that funny?" And she said, "No, I'm sorry, I'm just a little nervous. You know, that it's caught me by surprise." And at that moment, you've established this dominance and submissive relationship between these two.
Yep.
And that's carried through the whole film where they're exploring this. It turns out that the gallery owner is impotent. And he is into this dominance and submission dynamic.
There's a great scene at the beginning of the movie that establishes this, where it shows him manipulating dolls and things like that.
Yeah, he's got all these little miniature dolls of naked women and things. It's really bizarre.
He's like banging them together.
So, so what he lets her in on is that he hires these girls as photographic models. He like advertises in these photo journals, and they sign up, and they come to his place, and he gets them to strip down, and he gets them to do various poses or whatever, and not quite humiliating poses, but it is very clear that he pushes them into an uncomfortable state.
Okay. Yeah.
And she's fascinated and repulsed at the same time. And so she's really she is magnetized to this world. And so the rest of the film is them kind of exploring this and him exerting his dominance over her. And she comes to his office at one point basically begging to go back and do it again at his place. More photography with that model, and I'll be in the shots this time. And he establishes even further, you've got to ask for it. You've got to do it this way. You have to ask me this way.
He tries to give her the rules.
Yeah, and so very much in that 50 Shades of Grey kind of way, their relationship is cemented. And then the movie loses its plot.
I really got annoyed by the ending. It was one of the more disappointing endings I've seen in a long time. Like, what was it? Maybe, it wasn't that, 15, 20 minutes maybe?
It reminds me of the ending of Jules and Jim.
Okay.
Because
I like that movie a lot, but I don't actually remember the movie or ending that well.
So can you give us any details, without spoilers, about how it jumps the shark in the final act?
Well, she becomes kind of obsessed with him, and then she gets into an accident. And it's like, why did she get into an accident? Why is what? And so then it becomes this like psychological trip into her consciousness.
Well, and then suddenly they get him to flip, or like he's been establishing this dominant thing. Then all of a sudden it turns almost into a maudlin romance.
Yeah, it's really odd. I don't understand the choices. And in her dream sequence, she's nude, but she's wearing this. There's like this clear plastic raincoat that the original model wears, and she's dancing in it. And I don't understand what they were going for.
No, that's kind of hot, though.
It is hot. Don't get me wrong. It's hot, and I want to watch her other movies because if you like girls with like the little speckle of freckles across the bridge of her nose,
yes,
that's the girl. She's adorable. In terms of their setup and the bulk of the movie, this dominance and submissive kind of relationship, without being, there's nothing really overtly sexual in the film at all, because again, the guy's impotent, so you don't get any of that payoff. But in terms of the palpable tension between the two and their power dynamic,
it's all psychological.
It is completely nailed down in a much better way than 50 Shades of Grey could ever have hoped to achieve.
And that actor, the actor really nailed when he's interrogating her to get her, to test her, and not just test her, but to teach her the rules.
Yeah.
He was really unsettling at that and very good.
And he kind of had almost like a James Bond villain kind of vibe going on, because he was super wealthy, wealthy enough to have a manservant in his house.
Yeah.
It just, I don't know, it's just something really weird about it. And again, 1968.
Well, he's a patron of the arts, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean,
yeah. It's just the product of its time. And, but again, getting back to photography, the film at its core is about his kink, because he can't express sexual satisfaction.
So everybody knows that the previously referenced 50 Shades of Grey started out like the manuscript was supposed to be a Twilight erotic fanfic.
Yeah.
Not a lot of people know that this movie, Le Prisonnier, was actually originally a fanfic porno of Bridges of Madison County.
What the fuck?
Because the time traveler's wife got thrown in a blender with it. And they went. I don't know.
It's worth a watch, I think, just because of the things I said before. Just be aware that by the end of the film, though, you'll probably be scratching your head just like Todd and I were. We're like, what? Huh?
I just promised my mom
My
I would
guess-
mention Bridges of Madison County.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you
My,
for
my
doing
guess was that I feel like a meddling producer was involved with this somehow.
that. Yeah, I would love to know the full story, but we couldn't get it. It's just not there for the taking. So that was my film. I do want to mention that Lee, when he was going to be on the show, he wanted to talk about Pecker, which is a film.
He always wants to talk
about his
Pecker.
Pecker. This is a film by John Waters, starring Edward Furlong.
Yeah, this is an outlier for John Waters.
It is. It's not as bizarre as a lot of his films, but it does have its cast of strange characters. But he wanted to discuss that, and
And it's before Edward Furlong turned into Jabba the Hutt.
Yes, this is true. There are other films in the collection. I'm surprised you didn't pick Rear Window.
I thought that would be too obvious of the choice because of my well-known Hitchcock love, and also I've thought about and talked about that movie with people, not on podcasts so much over the years. You could do a whole episode.
Just beat that
about
dead
it anyway.
horse.
Yeah, I could have beat that dead horse, but I wanted to rewatch Blowout. And
Yeah.
So
if Blow Up.
well, I keep confusing it with the De Palma. Sorry, Blow
Now
Up.
that's your double feature.
Yep.
Blow Up
it
and
is,
Blow
yeah.
Out.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Blow it up, blow it out.
Blow Out.
It's like the tagline for 21 Jump Street. The only thing getting blown tonight is their cover.
So that's going to do it for Photography Films, the photographer's gaze.
Picture this.
So in the meantime, please remember to rate, review, subscribe, tell your friends about us, and
Tell your friends you love them.
do kind things for total strangers. And in the meantime, also please remember to watch, shop, retrofit. Snapshot, you shutterbugs.
Speaking of football, Travis, and
I turn my camera on.